Yeah, it's great to have you on the show again. The report that was handed down, anything surprise you in that?
No, I had a good read of it. I think the acting head of the Electoral Commission deserves credit for acknowledging that the West Australian failure was the biggest failure in the AEC's history. And the report tells us that they are looking right through every aspect of the organisation to see where they can improve things.
What are some of the options there?
Your introduction, well, as you pointed out in your introduction, Peter, having an electronic electoral roll so that when you walk into a polling booth and your name's crossed off, it simultaneously goes off at every other booth in that electorate. So as you know, at the moment, you have paper rolls and you walk in and your name gets crossed off, but there's nothing to stop someone else walking in your name in another booth.
Or you doing it multiple times yourself if you feel so inclined.
Correct.
Well, it's just remarkable to me that, you know, where we are now, the digital age, that we would still have an old-fashioned system like we do. I mean, are we unique amongst developed countries in that sense?
We're not unique, but the technological catch-up's necessary. They did trial this at the last federal election, but because of what happened in Western Australia, they were very focused on the Griffith by-election, on doing everything to the best degree they possibly could. So in that by-election, every booth, every polling place had that computer technology, and I'm encouraged by that, and obviously we want to see a bigger rollout at the next election.
Now, we talked a lot earlier in the year about electoral reform, particularly obviously to the Senate, in light of what happened with you know, some of the unusual, shall we say, results that came about there. There's been a fair bit of bullishness in the past. Liberal Party, National Party, Labor Party, I think the Greens have been on board as well. That hasn't changed, has it? It's just gone a little bit quiet. Why is that?
Oh, well, we tabled our report in good time, and it's now up to the government to consider its response to it and the timing of any legislation. But the important thing, as I've pointed out, Peter, is it's a unanimous report, so it's durable, and that's important because if you're going to have electoral reform, you don't want chopping and changing on your electoral laws every 4 or 5 years.
Are you still confident that they're going to follow the report's recommendations, though? I mean, that was certainly the expectation in the media at the start of the year. Is it simply a case of this can come later?
Well, as I've said, it's not urgent this week or this month, but it's vital reform for the future and for the next election, because in your state, the Senate ballot paper had 110 boxes. It can't get any bigger. Literally, they cannot print on a bigger ballot paper. All they can do is reduce the size of the font for the candidates, and they're handing out magnifying sheets. So that's where we're at. And,
are you as cynical as me, though, Tony Smith? Do you think that one of the reasons we're not hearing as much about this...
No.
Well, maybe not generally, but on this specific point... what about on this specific point? I mean, it seems to me, and I can understand it, I'm not even that critical of it, quite frankly, that perhaps what the executive are doing is they're deciding just to shelve this and come back to it at a later date because they can, because in the meantime, they really need to work with some of these smaller parties in conjunction with Palmer United to try to get the budget through. No harder way to try to achieve that, I wouldn't have thought, Tony Smith, than to be saying that you're trying to change the law to get rid of these people at the same time as negotiate with them.
Well, look, I think there's a range of things, Peter. I mean, with electoral changes, there's time, as I said. There's also lots of things in the Senate, so there's always a bit of a battle to get in there. And we're going to report on other matters as well in the coming months. We've got some hearings coming up in November. There are other issues we're considering that
what sort of things?
We've discussed before, like voter identification. That's something that we're considering. The electronic roll we've spoken about would be a great step forward, but having
Labor's opposed to that generally, though, aren't they? They tend to not like the idea of ID-based voting. Why do you suspect that is? The altruistic argument is that it's because people that maybe, for example, homeless might be marginalised. The more cynical argument is that if you're looking to stack or have some sort of fraudulent impact, then the last thing you want is ID.
Yeah, well, it's in our terms of reference. That's why we're looking at it. But I've long supported a form of voter ID, and I've never really got to the bottom of why they're so opposed to it. I mean, we have ID in so many forms for so many things, as you pointed out, to hire a DVD or a video, but when it comes to our democratic destiny, we don't have any at all. And I think that's something that we need to consider. We're considering as part of our inquiry, and talking about how we compare with other nations. We're well behind the rest of the world on that score.
Yep, and I think it's bizarre. I'm in your camp on that one. Tony Smith, appreciate your time as always. Thanks very much.